Hello, this is Opeyemi with The Doctor Speaks. I promised some of you all over at TikTok a longer video about Sobonfu Some, so I'm going to start from scratch here for those of you who are not on TikTok and just say, holy moly, I had a teacher and she was quite amazing, and she was not well received by more than some new age white women 30 years ago when she came from her country. So once upon a time, a elder community of the Dagara people, a tribe in Central Africa and Burkina Faso, got together and sent a woman to be the partner to a man who was already over here. The man's name is Sobonfu Some. He's written several books. He had quite amazing experience of being one of those indigenous people who was snatched away from his people by the Jesuits when he was 5 or 6 years old. And he found his way back to his people in the bush. Now, what I heard was different than what you'll find in Wikipedia. So I'm telling my story because it's The Doctor Speaks. And because you're settling in with a cup of tea, right? With me to just take our time with this. Okay. So what I heard, which was from the horse's mouth, was that he ran away back to the bush, found his people, was late to have his initiation that he would have had when he was 8 or 9 years old. And we're not talking the circumcision part. That's a whole different deal. I'm talking the initiation he talked about, which is jumping through some goat skin, having people disappear and reappear. And if you didn't pass your initiation, it often meant you were left as a strange little mass of a lump of nothing on the ground. So we're talking pretty magical, pretty spiritual people. Anyway, that group of people looked at what was going on with us, the West here in the United States of America, and said to themselves, we must send more help to take the fire out of those people, or they're going to burn us all to the ground. So, having said that, they sent Sobonfu. Sobonfu arrived, and I met her probably within 3 to 6 months of her arriving here in the United States. So I don't know where that puts us on a timeline, but it's a good 30 years ago. And when I met her, I was a doctor practicing, and she was a new American. I met her at Kripalu, where I just went, which is why this is so much on my mind. That's a yoga retreat center. There were about 20 of us in her Women's Mysteries retreat for that weekend. And I was the only woman of African descent. Everybody else was, as I said, the people who became her spiritual apostles. And they were mainly New Agey white women. She took me aside the second day into this retreat we were at and said, we must do some work together. See, she didn't know that I was not up to her peer-to-peer assumptions. She knew that I was the highest thing they had as far as doctoring here in the United States. She says to me, we must do some work together. We must make a ritual. And the ritual was to take this egg, and we're talking African ritual here with a Western-trained allopathic doctor, take an egg and put it on the belly of the woman over her womb space as she's lying on the ground, suck into the egg negative energy, and take all those eggs carefully gathered together into a basket. And the next day we did ritual and ceremony and buried them outside in Kripalu under a tree. Now, why were we doing this? Because she had seen, looking at us, that there was a black hole of sucking energy. That's how she described it. I see this black hole there. These people, they are just sucking, sucking, sucking. And you know, I have to say, as a wiser, older elder now, I can look back and I can see what she saw. I couldn't see it clearly the way she did at the time. But it's almost as if we here in the United States of America, those of us born with wombs, have been born and have had so much trauma to how our wombs are shamed and blamed and shaped, that it's just a sucking place where all the creativity is wanting from outside. All of the reproductive energies are confused. People making babies and aborting babies and making babies and aborting more babies and making more babies and aborting babies. Women praying for babies and then being very confused as they become mothers on what they want. All kinds of strange energies there. but she buried it in the ground. That is not the end of the story. That's the beginning of the story. Because over the next 30 years, I watched my mentor have her own belly grow. Now, at first it looks like, okay, she probably has some uterine fibroids. That's true for a lot of Black women. Her belly grew more and more and more. And by the time she was essentially ready to go back to Africa for whatever she was going to do next on her life, her belly was as big as a physical therapy ball. And I do mean maybe 3 times the size of any pregnant woman's belly. If she fell backwards, she would not be able to get back up on her feet by herself. She was the epitome by that time of a spidery woman. And I thought, spider woman, how interesting that that's the metaphor that I see when I watch her. Despite not many, but a few doctors in our community who were more than ready to support any ritual she wanted to cut that shit out of her and bury it in the ground. She was on her own healing path, her own spiritual path, and she would not let us interfere with her in any way. So she went back home, having wasted with this gigantic belly, died peacefully in her own village. And she died on the same day that we here were having the Women's March in protest of Trump's inauguration. Now, I do not believe for a minute that that was a coincidence. And I do believe, I'm going to share now, that my story years later about her is that she looked at us, she offered us women's mysteries that we could not understand. She's saying things to us in this group like, when we ask her, well, how do you all do contraception in your community? And she's looking like, what does that mean? Because she's still learning English. And when it's explained to her, she's responding, oh, you know, how you don't make the babies come. Well, can't you all smell? That was her response. Whoa, okay. And I got it immediately. The pheromones, the ways we interfere with deodorants and perfumes, and we don't know our own bodies anyway. Science will tell you now that the saliva in your mouth changes when you're fertile. So your partner could actually tell when you're fertile if we were sensitive enough to pay attention to these things. I say all these years later. But way back then, we couldn't connect. So she tried to offer us prosperity rituals. Same chakra, second chakra, all about money and creativity. That didn't fly either. What flew for her were our grief rituals. And we did lots and lots of grief rituals with this amazing woman who, like when you sit in a sweat lodge, had a whole ceremony for how we would grieve. And what it did was allowed us to release those toxins out of your tears and out of your eyes, just like a sweat helps you release the toxins from your body. And I remember my favorite thing was how she would say, you can blow your nose, but do not wipe your eyes. If you wipe your eyes, they will get puffy. So simply blow your nose. So that is my story, not at all gory, about an amazing woman that is underappreciated. And I hope that her appreciation of her 3 books will grow over time, because that's what often happens is after somebody dies, their reputation is more well known and they get bigger.